applicants represented by the Socio-Economic Rights Institute are taking Operation Dudula and government to court. They're seeking relief from harassment and xenophobic actions, which they claim happened during their evictions by Operation Dudula in the Johannesburg city centre. For more on this, I am joined by Socio-Economic Rights Institute Executive Director Nomzamo Zondo. Thank you so much for your time, Nomzamo. We do appreciate it. Let's just start off with what exactly you are seeking and what exactly Operation Dudula as well as government did for you to want to head to court.
So thank you, Heidi. So we act for 4 organizations who have been working with different individuals who have brought forward evidence that shows actions from Dudula, which include assault, threats of violence, including threats to kill. It shows incidents where Dudula has stopped people from gaining access to healthcare, sometimes highly pregnant women who needed to give birth. It shows their actions in interfering in schools. And we are asking the court, firstly, against Operation Dudula, to interdict them and stop them from harassing, intimidating, and assaulting any person that they perceive to be a foreign national. We are also asking that they be stopped from taking the actions they have been taking, which includes interfering with access to schools for school children. For instance, in our court papers, we tell the story of the streetlight schools, GP Primary School, which closed down at the end of 2022, following 6 months of harassment from Operation Dudula, leaving over 300 children going out of school, mostly South African children. It also shows incidents of interference with people accessing healthcare, especially in the GP's town area. It shows incidents of threats of violence to people living in inner city buildings and sometimes in places like Soweto, and also interfering with informal traders trading in the inner city of Johannesburg. We are asking the court to interdict Dudula from these actions because they are unlawful. Sometimes they're also criminal. We are also asking the court specifically to address Dudula's actions in relation to demanding papers, identification, proof of identification from people they perceive to be foreign nationals. Firstly, seeking a clarification of the law that the Immigration Act only empowers immigration officers and police officers to seek that identification from people in this country. That too, even in as far as the Department of Home Affairs and the police have conducted dragnet raids of whole communities in Alexandra, in Hillbrow, in Diepsloot, in collusion with Operation Dudula, that those actions are themselves unlawful. What has also been worrying is that the people who spoke to us and brought forward evidence, some of them who had been assaulted by members of Dudula, have tried to seek assistance from the police, but they've really had a response where either they'd been sent away without any assistance, they'd been ignored, or had simply had the police laugh at their face saying, look, these cases that you're opening are not going to go anywhere, which shows the police have failed to meet their obligation to protect people living in South Africa and to combat crime, which is an obligation that is placed upon them by the Constitution. It is also worrying that over and above this, the government has in the last 4 years made strides and at least made clear commitments to address xenophobia. We have in this country a national action plan against racism, racial intolerance, xenophobia, and other intolerance. And that plan was meant to address xenophobic tensions. It was meant to ensure that when there are incidents of xenophobic violence, that government has in place a system that is able to respond rapidly, but also that government is able to create data so that it can see how these incidents are happening, whether there is accountability for those incidents through police investigation and ultimately through prosecution by the National Prosecuting Authority. Unfortunately, when you look at what has the court papers detailed incidents that start from February 2022 up to April this year, and it shows a worrying sign of inaction on these two urgent interventions around xenophobia, but also a clear signs of collusion with the police and Home Affairs working hand in hand and having joint operations with Operation Dudula. And this is concerning because here we have people who are civilians who have, first of all, identified themselves as using violence to at least meet their target, which is to push out foreign nationals from this country, saying they have the backing of government, that they work collaboratively with government, which in the long term undermines the legitimacy of the South African Police Service. It undermines the legitimacy of the Department of Home Affairs. It undermines the legitimacy of the South African state, especially when it comes...
Sorry, Nomzamo, I'm just going to jump in here. Sorry, I don't mean to interject, but I just want to ask you, so you essentially are... what are you saying? Are you saying that government is enabling these types of operations conducted by Operation Dudula?
Definitely, that's what we are saying. If you take the most famous example of the actions of Dudula, which relates to the death of Elvis Nyati, after the death of Elvis Nyati, instead of having government go into that community and try and ensure that there's more social cohesion and host dialogues to bring the community together, instead what we saw police going into the community and raiding households demanding documents, in effect doing the bidding of Operation Dudula. And even in our court papers, again, there are incidents where people, members of Dudula, say, we have the ear of the provincial commissioner in Gauteng. And in fact, the Minister of Home Affairs, Minister Motsoaledi, in a letter he wrote to our office, told us that the raids that we saw in Alexandra and Hillbrow were brought following complaints from South African citizens. So clearly, there has been collusion between, at the very minimum, the Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Police with Dudula.
Certainly, and I think what's important to get out there that the Socio-Economic Rights Institute is trying to achieve is to, do you have an issue with the actual operations, or do you have an issue with the aggression that is shown in these types of operations?
So firstly, our constitution precludes speech that incites harm against other people. So even when we're talking about the operations and the gatherings of Operation Dudula, we're also talking about the social media messaging, which clearly creates hatred against foreign nationals, but secondly incites harm. In fact, most of the time celebrates violence, criminal acts against foreign nationals. So we are against that. Over and above that, we have other concerns. We have a concern with the fact that Operation Dudula routinely wears uniform regalia that resembles that of the SANDF, which is in effect a criminal offense. It's criminalized not only by the Defense Act, but it's also criminalized by the Gatherings, the Regulation of Gatherings Act. And they do that alongside the police, and they're ignored. They're never held to account for that. Even office bearers of Dudula have made comments. If you go to the Dudula official Twitter page, and you simply just screen through the posts that have been put out there, there are clear posts of people being beaten. And it's clear that Dudula is celebrating those incidents. And that's what we are calling to account. We are calling to account the spread of hatred. We are calling to account the violent targeting of foreign nationals in this country, because, and the applicants are clear that they are doing this because they believe that no one deserves that treatment. They believe that our constitution has a vision that says, umuntu ngabantu, that our humanity demands that we treat everyone with dignity. And in fact, a key message of Kopanang Africa Against Xenophobia is that we demand all of these things. We demand humanity, we demand respect for foreign nationals, because we demand that for ourselves. We demand that as people living in informal settlements, for Zondo, we demand that as informal traders trading in the inner city of Johannesburg, we demand that because we're entitled to it as human beings. Our nationality can never strip us of that.
Just lastly, Nomzamo, maybe just speak to us about whether or not this is an urgent application and if you have received a court date as yet.
Thank you, Heidi. So this application has been brought in the normal course. As I explained, the case has been built in a period that covers over a year. It's been brought in the normal course. We served Operation Dudula and all the government departments between the 17th and the 19th of May. In fact, Operation Dudula has commented to say they are aware of the case and that they are busy collating evidence to prove that everything that we say is false. We are looking forward to receiving their answering papers. And it is likely the matter will be heard in the next few months, possibly in September, possibly earlier than that if the courts can accommodate us. One of the things that's pressing that I did not mention, Heidi, is that in this case, we've asked the court to protect the anonymity of the witnesses who've given evidence in this case. We've done that precisely because of the modus operandi of Operation Dudula, and some of the witnesses who are making these requests are people who have received death threats from Dudula, are people who have been assaulted by Dudula, and we are saying we know how Dudula operates. Not only are they fearful of direct threats, but they're also fearful that they will be targeted, that there will be doxing on them. And we've seen this in our own experiences as an organization. I've seen it myself in my own personal experience just in the last 3 days. If you go to my personal Twitter page, you see the treatment that people who support Dudula, who identify as Dudula, are leveraging to the organizations that are bringing this case. And we are going to ask the court to ensure that none of the witnesses have their identity, address, professional status, and identifying factors disclosed to the public, except the people that are directly participating in the case. And we're asking that, unfortunately, because our experience of Operation Dudula has been one of violence.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually very worrying, the fact that, you know, people's lives might be at risk because they want to speak out about their experiences around these operations organized by Operation Dudula. But thank you so much for your time this evening, Nomzamo, and we will be checking in with you. That is, of course, Nomzamo Zondo, who is from the Socio-Economic Rights Institute. She's an executive director there.